Hi, my name is John Cashin, and let's talk about the Comanche Tribe. So, why am I interested? Well, when I was young, my grandmother told my sister and I a story about how my great-great-grand aunt was abducted by Comanche and raised for 24 years, and that at the end of it, when she came back to white society, she rejected it and didn't want to be a part of it and went into a hunger strike and died. So, most of the story I didn't know very much about, but I had to learn a little bit. Learn a little bit about it during the researching of this, and that story is why I got kind of caught up in this. So, there are a few misconceptions which I'd like to cover first. The first of all is that people think that the Comanche are extinct, and this is not true. As long as the people still survive, then the culture still survives, and they do, so it's not extinct. The people will continue to live, the language is still around. There's also this concept in anthropology of the noble savage. This is the idea that quote-unquote primitive people are somehow better than, but also worse than white society, that they're inherently better or worse. But you should not think about it this way, just think about them as people, very intelligent people who adapted to their surroundings. That's the most accurate way of looking at it. So I want to start off with some wow moments because it was really easy to get emotional doing this project because there's so much pride and so much heartache in reclaiming Native identity in general, but also Comanche identity specifically. But there's a concerted effort to do it. There are preschools, there's the Comanche Nation College, and there are other aspects to try to reclaim this culture and try to reclaim the language. And it was just inspiring to see how much passion goes into doing that. Especially because it's a lot of the times a younger crowd who'll be teaching parents who were raised thinking that their language either didn't matter or would keep them from getting a job. And so it's very emotional for a lot of people. The language. In Comanche, and the language is called Nama Tekwapu. In Nama Tekwapu, the word for Comanche person is Namana, which means the people. And the word Comanche is actually a slur in Uta, which means adversary or someone who likes to kill a lot. But they identify as that word to this day because it became so popular. The language is Uto-Aztecan, which means that it's from the family of the Uta from Utah and Aztec from the empire that collapsed several hundreds of years before they were around. They are also a Shoshone dialect, which means they come from the Shoshone Mountains and have a lot of cultural and linguistic parallels with the Shoshone people. The Comanche Language and Culture Preservation Committee is specifically targets trying to keep this language alive and make it something that people can speak to their children, speak to their family about. And that was in 1996 that was started, and that project is still going on to this day. So for the major cultural features, number one is a focus on autonomy, so personal freedom. They believe that your choices matter and that they're almost sacred to an extent. They define who you are and they make humans or anyone worthy of respect. And for that reason, they think personal choice should be respected even if you disagree with it. And this caused a lot of problems between white settlers and Comanche because if one person went out and did something, the Comanche might not disavow them. They might just say that was their choice and not connect it as a people group. They also voted in by democratic vote their leaders, their chieftains. They had two. One was a civil chieftain and the other one was a chieftain of war. They would both be voted in, and they'd be voted in on the basis of achievement, charisma, and essentially a resume, achievement, what all their successes. This also kind of goes into how they view animals also. They think they have the same type of personal freedom that humans do, and so they use all of the kill to honor the animal also. So their religion is a combination of animism and monotheism. So they believe that there's a great creator spirit and a great evil spirit. And in modern days, they're mostly Christian because the religions kind of parallel really easily. Even if you're a Catholic, the spirits that they worship also, in addition to these two deities, or in addition to the great creator spirit, could also be seen as saints or something like this. But they are different. They do believe that the sun and moon are also spirits, and that most animals in nature are spirits. They also have this concept of the great snakes, which come during a time of some apocalypse. But many believe that the snakes refer to the colonists and that the apocalypse has already come. And that's why the culture is in the state that it is now. There are very few ceremonies. The most important one is the male vision quest. In modern days, there aren't very many ceremonies that still remain, and there's some debate about if that's because they didn't practice that many, which is what many people believe, or that many of them are lost, and it's probably a little bit of both. So this is the seal of the Comanche Nation. They were referred to as the Lords of the Plain. The warrior on the right comes from the stereotype of the red man, but it's also that was the designation given to them by the settlers. But it's also a warrior to represent, their connection with their society and to that status of a warrior. The blue represented loyalty, while the yellow represented happiness and the majesty of the sun. They colored the entire seal in this style because it is reminiscent of the warrior blanket that they would wear that was purchased through the British wool trade. So to begin their history, they migrated from the Shoshone Mountains and settled into North Texas and eventually dominated most of it. There were 13 recorded bands during the pre-contact period, or during the post-contact period, but there may have been more. So Comanche was the region that was most of North Texas and most of Texas in general, where the Comanche ruled, and it was a firm geopolity that was actually a threat to Spain. Spain would fund colonists to live in the space where San Antonio is now, and that formed a border region between Comanche and Spain and Mexico. And so you might ask, how were the colonists able to peel back Comanche until they was able to be colonized? Well, they hunted out all the buffaloes systematically until the Comanche had to rapidly change their subsistence patterns, and it was very difficult for them to survive that way, and suffering from war fatigue, they mostly collapsed. The Apache were their mortal enemies. When the Comanche moved down, they pushed out the Apache and forced them into warfare with Spain and pushed them between these two groups, and that led to a large destruction of the Apache culture, and that's why there is so much animosity between them. Following this, they were able to achieve complete domination of the region. They really did run it. There were no other tribes that were allowed to live there without their permission, and Spanish were not able to push them back without help later on. They would even attack Spanish missions that were built just to Christianize Apaches. When they found out that that's what they were doing, they saw this as siding with the Apaches and would attack on sight, even if there was a treaty or something. So I want to quickly talk about... How much time do I have?
1.
Okay, I want to quickly talk about Cynthia Ann Parker. So Cynthia Ann Parker was a woman who was kept at Fort Parker. When she was taken, she was 9 years old, and she was raised for 24 years within the tribe. Even to this day, she and her son, Quanah Parker, are almost mythic figures because she rejected white culture when she was brought back. She only learned very little English when she died, And when she was taken, she tried leaving several times to go back to Comanche territory and go back to her old life. But this ended up being impossible for her, and she died of a hunger strike. Quanah Parker is to this day still a mythological figure. He was like larger than life. He represents the type for reconciliation between the colonists and the Comanches. So he would dress in a combination of Comanche and settler style. So he'd wear suits, but he'd also keep his hair long. And he had 8 wives, which was illegal by Texas civil law. And he'd also wear, sometimes they're like moccasins, but he would combine the fashion and represent that. Like he represented the fusion of those two groups. And eventually when he did retire to a reservation, he became firmly cemented within the religion and became a kind of like religious leader. But eventually he did die as well, and his legacy lives on in modern days with the Comanche. Thank you very much. That completes my presentation.